Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for attending my session. My name is Anna Kozubek, and I'm Operational Manager for LBS Suite. It's such an honor to present at Mid-Central Europe Conference because the main topic, vendor management, is still, in my humble opinion, not enough discussed in the industry. Vendor manager for years was the most underrated role in translation company. And that was a serious mistake. Still, mainly considered as a recruiter of translators, vendor manager have gained a bit more importance in the last few years, proving that any growing LSP can't really handle the growth without a competent person to select and manage the translators database. Personally, I experienced vendor management from different angles, without being vendor manager myself. With my first experience, I used to be a freelance translator, so vendor manager was my main contact at the recruitment stage to new LSPs with which I wanted to collaborate. Vendor manager was testing me, providing a feedback, and finally negotiating rates with me. Then I became project manager, and in my job, I relied constantly on the hard work of my colleagues, vendor managers. That was already a quite opening experience at that time, because I realized that vendor management goes much beyond just posting job offers on pros. I could already notice that my resources were well selected, that we kept track of the quality. I had peace of mind because I knew that whatever happens, urgent project, unusual language combination, specific topics, high volumes, whatever, I was having access to the most qualified and suitable vendors for that job. However, it was still incomplete inside because I was ignoring the entire process, the huge part of the work done in order to get the best selection of vendors. And then I started to work for technology provider. And this perspective gave me also another view. On daily basis, I have a big chance to meet representatives of different roles in translation company, including vendor managers, and discuss about how to improve their processes. That revealed me another part of vendor management job, importance and capacity of data analysis. I'm sure many of you are smiling right now because you must hear this question many times in your career. The common image of vendor manager role is based on very human and relational qualities. Vendor manager will be the ambassador of your company, the central point of contact between freelancers and LSP. So she or he will need to be an excellent communicator and sometimes effective negotiator as well. Vendor manager needs to prove every day perfect soft skills and high emotional intelligence. We could easily call this role a relationship manager. It is what we can notice as a main criteria of recruitment. I reviewed a bunch of job offers destined to potential vendor managers, coming from different sizes of LSPs around Europe. They were pointing mainly such skills as excellent written and spoken communication skills, good relationship building, influencing and negotiation skills, ability to work in multicultural environment, and experience in recruitment. All these skills are absolutely necessary in vendor manager work. There is no doubt about it, don't get me wrong. However, I had the impression there is still one very important element missing in this list. The role of vendor manager is driven by three main elements: searching for suppliers, selecting and validating them, maintaining the database in the best possible shape to after allocate easily the coming projects. If we think a second about these three elements and how you process them, we can clearly see they are all related to data. Data should be a very close friend of every vendor manager who needs to make proof of solid analytical skills to take the most of possible from this gold mine. Behind every single resource in your database, there is information about expertise, qualifications, rates, responsiveness, quality. You have so many possibilities. Decisions of vendor manager are, fortunately, driven by data and not only by emotional side of the job. In order to keep your suppliers database the most active, productive, and competent, you need to store first a certain amount of information. I will give you a few examples of how you can select and turn some data to be able to choose your suppliers in the best possible way. The very first data you should verify in your company to avoid big troubles is if you have enough resources for your project, which means tracking the capacity that you have per language and per service. Let's assume that you translate 100,000 words every 10 days from English to French in finance field. You know that average daily capacity of your translator is 2,500 words per day. So you have 10,000 words to translate daily, which is the equivalent of 4 translators' jobs per day. 4 translators, which should be trusted, validated, and having good value for money. If you have more than 4 active translators in your database for this specific service and language combination, excellent, part of the job is done. But still, you need to see if these 4 are truly reliable and active resources. We will see in a minute on which criteria you can base your analysis. If you have less than 4 or only 4, you need to recruit very quickly because this lack of resources can impact you very soon in next projects. New recruitment is necessary, but unfortunately quite time-consuming. The time to contact potential suppliers, testing them, entering to database, it can be very problematic in situation when you are running out of time. So before recruiting new vendors, explore to the maximum resources you already have registered. Detect your, how we can call them, sleeping vendors. So suppliers with whom you haven't worked for a while, maybe even for a few years, and are kind of ghosts in your database. Sort them by the date of last order. Check since when they haven't worked with you and investigate why. What exactly happened since then? You can do it progressively. First, find all vendors who worked last time for you for project 2 years ago. After, find the group who worked last time 1 year ago and 6 months ago. This progressive cleaning of your forgotten resources can certainly reveal some good profiles. If you are in more comfortable situation and you have more than 4 suppliers, now you need to pass them by few criteria. You deserve to have a supplier database full of highly motivated vendors. And tracking the responsiveness of your vendors is giving you first insight on how motivated they are and also predict their behavior in the future for next projects. If you have 10 translators in your database, but 3 of them never take the job or never reply, you can't really consider all 10 of them as ready to use. Analyze the number of requests which you sent during specific amount of time to your vendors, let's say 1 year. Comparing the proportion of positive and negative replies in period of time is already a good indication. Because on daily basis, project manager might not notice certain tendency of certain vendors to say yes or to say no. But let's add another layer. No answer. Because no reply is a reply, like in normal life. The number of requests from your side which never received the vendor's reply will show you the most which resources are worth or not to be kept in your database. It will be crucial to make the right move from your side. You can remove vendors from your list or get in touch with the supplier and investigate what was the reason of this non-responsiveness. If you decide to remove some suppliers from the database, go back to the point 1 and check if you're not in the lack of resources. One note about this very useful data, collection of this kind of information and tracking who is replying in positive or negative way, it demands a bit of discipline from project managers because they receive the replies from so many different channels, by emails, by Skype, by chat, by call. So in this case, you need to explain to your PMs the importance of registering this information regularly and how it can help them in the future. You can have thousands of suppliers in your database, but if you can't work with them safely, you can't have trust to their quality. It's like you are having empty database, basically. That's why you need to have a rating system, which will show you clearly on which resources you can rely. If you make the calculation from the point one, and in average, you have 10 suppliers for specific surveys in English to French combination, but between them two are far from being good, it means that in reality, you have only 8 suppliers. And maybe you will need to come back to the point one about lack of resources and start your recruitment. The best way to have reliable data about quality is to rate suppliers systematically, ideally after each project and on many layers. In this way, you will get the data on different types of criteria, sometimes changing depending from the type of the project. Maybe in some project you will rate more terminology or spelling, and on another project, the style. For example, for a finance project, I will rate my supplier on 3 criteria: spelling, terminology, figures. On editorial project, I will rate on style, spelling, understanding, and style will be the most important one. In this case, I need to take into my calculation different scale of importance for specific criteria. You can calculate now the average score per supplier, per type of service, and per language. Keep this average score well accessible, so your PM will use this data after, while choosing vendors for next project. By analyzing the quality results tracked by language or by criteria, you can notice also a more global view on some issues in your company. For example, you will get information what is the average score for spelling in all the projects from French to German. If the average score is bad, it concerns all suppliers for this combination. So maybe the mistake happened at the level of recruitment and suppliers didn't get the right information about your expectations. Price pressure is a reality of many LSPs. We want to propose the most advantageous prices to our clients, so we need to buy the translation at most advantageous price as well. First step will be, of course, to compare the rates already on the level of search of suppliers. How to evaluate the pricing? On the more global level, you can calculate the average price of your suppliers per language combination. So you can clearly see in which combinations you should negotiate with your vendors, which combinations are becoming more expensive, and what kind of impact it can have on your clients' prices, for example. Let's assume that for my client's project, I can spend maximum 9 cents per word to keep my margin. The average price for all suppliers is a good first idea. However, it can be sometimes misleading and make some errors in judgment. As on this example, based on the price of 5 translators, I see the average price is 0.094 euro. But does it give us the real state of database? In this case, even better calculation will be the median price. So the price situated exactly in the middle. I will have exactly the same, say half of suppliers below the price and the half of suppliers above this price. This very simple calculation can give me more accurate state of your vendors' prices list. And you can really detect if you have enough resources in the price fitting your budget. All these 3 types of data are crucial for your business and for the selection of your suppliers. Combine them, make sure that you have enough resources fitting all these 3: responsiveness, quality, and price. If you have great price with some vendors, but you see from statistics that their quality feedback is not the best or they don't respond regularly, it's not going to work. You need to gather the data from different places and mix them together. Only then you can consider a supplier as a completely reliable vendor. This cross analysis will give you finally the answer. Do you have enough translators? Or maybe not. Once I get to a very comfortable situation, When I have enough resources, I found all people I need, matching my three criteria. The problem is partially solved. But my mission here will be to make my PMs working with these right resources. And it's not always so obvious thing. As you know, in every translation company, it happens that PMs have sometimes tendency to contact all the time the same resources. And here I'm the first to confess it happened to me as well in my past of project manager, which is understandable. Project managers are creating very strong relationship with some vendors. They're becoming almost friends. It's quite difficult to convince PM to stop working suddenly with a supplier or reduce the volume and choose a new translator that they don't really know. How could you recommend the available optimized resources? You need to rely on objective data. You need to be able to show to your PM real figures proving that this translator is not the best choice because maybe he's not delivering the quality or delays we expect, or any other reason not making him the best resource in the database. It's not always easy to make realize the PM that his favorite, almost friend translator refused, for example, 70 projects this year. PM is not necessarily aware of that because he's handling also many other projects, but you will see in your data that on 200 projects in total, the translator refused 70, which is a big proportion. That's why it's important to give objective data to show the necessity of finding better resources. You can recommend your best optimized resources in different ways. You can announce once per month or per quarter the list of suggested suppliers, or communicating it regularly every day. It depends really on your organization and what kind of system would work better for your team. Once you suggested your suppliers, your team is aware which vendors should be used in priority, in theory, but you know that in real life, the transition is not so obvious and smooth. Maybe your PM will forget about a recommendation after 1 week. And here again, you need the data. You need to be able to supervise the use of these translators since the date you suggested them. Were they really used since 6 months or 8 months? If you recommended somebody 1 year ago, is this supplier still contacted in priority by your team? You should collect information what was happening between the moment you suggested the supplier and today. In this way, well, first you will check if your work was actually useful. And second, you can discover some new elements. If they weren't used, despite them being suggested, why? What happened? Maybe project manager has specific reasons for that. And here, go back to the point about tracking quality. All this data is crucial. Maybe you will find out that some of your suggested suppliers are not so reliable as you thought, or there is a problem with them and you need to stop suggesting them. Feedback on suggested vendors is a very important step which must be tracked. You can do the same about new suppliers that you just added to the database. So once you have done the job of recruitment, you need to be able to supervise if your effort was actually used afterwards by your team. It's good to have two groups of new suppliers. Give them special internal name or title to make the difference. One for somebody added to the database recently, for example, less than 3 weeks ago. And another type, for example, for 3 months ago. Compare how many jobs between all your jobs assigned were given to this type of suppliers. You will see how quickly your colleagues are assimilating new resources or not. Once you put all these vendors' optimized solutions with all this data, you need to compare the evolution. You can compare that for last 6 months or 1 year. How many new suppliers you introduced and at what level? Does it have an impact on general prices or responsiveness? Can you compare median prices at different stages of the year? Did it have an impact on your capacity to reply to your clients' needs? Did your turnover go up because you have more facilities and possibilities to answer your clients' requests. Make the global analysis of your work to make sure that you did the right selection and good recommendation. Let's say we selected vendors matching with our vital criteria for the business. And this is very important step and accomplishment to reach really this level. All data we have mentioned so far was coming directly from your business, from your own activity. But there is also a huge amount of data that you can and you should receive from your suppliers. And now I'm not talking only about the field of expertise or possible capacity. You need to know if your vendors are happy, satisfied, if they like working with you, if you, as a company, are fair on prices, conditions, due dates. It's about maintaining the relationship with your vendors. And here you come to another dimension of your work, which is measuring not as before the data fitting you, but data which are fitting your vendor. How to gather them? You can send a regular survey to your vendors to evaluate in a very detailed way last months and get their feeling about working with you. This data will give you the direction you need to respect, that you need to follow. Send the survey to your suppliers one by one with as detailed and precise criteria as possible to be able to collect and analyze this information. Once you get this data, compare the results. What kind of rate you receive per criteria? Which criteria are the most important? Who is saying what? Does your usual supplier say something different than the new one? Or maybe they agree on certain points. It's like tracking the quality, which we mentioned a bit before, but this time ranking your own work as a company. Remember, new recruitment always costs more to your company than keeping good already existing resources. Your suppliers are the best source of data for that. They will give you precise feedback on their needs. And if you know what their needs are, you will keep them for a long time. Usually, suppliers are not satisfied about three things: pricing, acceptable due dates, and payment terms. Are you too hard with prices? Are you putting too much pressure? Or maybe you pay too late. If your good and reliable supplier is saying that he's not paid on time, you need to react. Maybe you will need to investigate with accounting department what is happening. All these feedbacks needs to be analyzed in details to avoid losing your vendors. And since we talk about losing, recently I read an article on the blog dedicated to translation industry where somebody used very nice comparison, saying translators are the blood in the veins of any translation business. I couldn't agree more. LSP couldn't exist without linguists. And like in the human body, when you're losing blood, it's dangerous for you. As in translation company, when you lose your resources, you need to react quickly and strategically. As soon as you decide do not work with the vendor, or vendor decides do not work with you anymore, collect information about the reasons of this decision from both sides. This statistic will give you two insights. If decision comes from you, it's probably related to problems with quality or deadlines. You will notice where you should have made a potential error in recruitment and improve your recruitment process in the future. Maybe you will need to highlight and be more strict about some specific skills. If decision comes from the vendor, compare the reason why he's quitting with the results of the survey that we mentioned before. Maybe there was an issue already reported before by the supplier and nothing was done from the company side. Or maybe there is still possibility to improve. At the beginning, we spoke about the skills which vendor manager is supposed to have, like relationship skills because of the contact with suppliers. Sure thing. But this communicative side is crucial also in the communication with project managers. Vendor manager has very close relation with PMs, maybe even closer than with translators. Project manager, we trust VM constantly, every day. And the success of 100 jobs by PM will depend directly on vendor managers' choices of suppliers. That's why decision of VM needs to be based on objective information, objective, well combined, and regularly tracked data. Of course, it's not about transforming the vendor manager into a human calculator, far from that. But vendor manager needs to be rational data analyst who has access to necessary information and is able to make statements about what is happening on the vendor level, what kind of impact it has on the activity of entire company, and how to improve it. And how do you process your data? Which information you're analyzing and how do you use this result in your analysis? Drop me a line, or even better, join me for a QA session. I would love to know your approach. Thank you very much and speak soon.